Another thing that you can do is add an example or a story to explain your content more easily. Now, this is even more important, by the way, in motivational speeches. So if you are actually designing a motivational speech of some type, or you're trying to get people to do something different, this is absolutely critical. Rudyard Kipling, a famous quote from him, he said, if history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. Stories are very memorable. I'll give an example. When I was in college studying business, my dad invited me to a business conference in Fort Worth. And this business conference had a dozen or so motivational speakers and entrepreneurs presenting. And I was mesmerized by these guys that were on these people that were on stage. Each presenter got up, and that person would speak for 45 minutes to an hour on a specific business topic, and I was taking all the notes that I could muster. Um, and by the way, this was pre PowerPoint, so that's how old I am. The PowerPoint didn't really exist, so the speakers had visual aids that were displayed on these huge TV screens, these huge giant TV screens that were in the Coliseum rafters. And halfway through the second morning, the audiovisual guys removed the lectern from the stage, and the next presenter walked up on stairs and walked up the stairs with and all he had was just a microphone in his hand. So unlike the other folks that had a lectern that had notes in front of them that you could tell they were kind of look, they weren't really reading, but they had the notes to help them remember their content, and then they also had visual aids that they were using as well. This guy just got up and just started speaking into the microphone, and I found out later that he was a pastor. I mean, that was what his training was in, and but he had become a very popular motivational speaker as well. So this guy had no visual aids, but he had an ability to really paint a picture in the minds of the audience as he walked back and forth across the stage, reinforcing his content, his bullet points with story after story from his personal experience. So what these stories do is they paint a picture for your audience that is way more memorable than the static visual aid that you have in your slideshows or in your visual aids. Um, they add color, by the way. When you create content for your blog or motivational speech, these stories really add color to the presentation. I give an example, like as going back to that story that I was telling about this motivational speaker. At the end of that conference, I asked some of the attendees which of the speakers that they thought did the best job, and I'd only met a few people, but 5 of the 6 people that I talked to told me that this pastor, this guy I was talking about, was the one that they remembered most. And in fact, many of them were able to recall specific concepts from his speech because of the picture that he painted in their mind. So keep in mind that over the 3 days that we were there, we heard from some very powerful, very famous speakers. But this Southern pastor was the one that everybody remembered. And then years later, I now know why. It was because he made a personal connection with his audience by relaying those stories and examples. And you can too. If you create your presentation outline, when you do that, it's like creating a sketch. Going back to the drawing example, it's like a coloring book. You're looking at a black and white photo, and when you go back and you start adding in the stories and examples, that's when the photo comes into color. That's the stories add flavor. They add color to that presentation. Um, Another example, by the way, I was in a mastermind group in 2009 with a bunch of other professional speakers, and one of the members of the group was telling us about how he liked to always give his audience more than what he promised. So over promise, under deliver, right? Or sorry, under promise, over deliver. The exact opposite of that. He told us that he always covered more content than what he would put in his agenda, and what was interesting was that one of the other members just kind of rebuked him, and it was the way that he stated it was very obvious once he said it. But he said, "Man, I hate to break it to you, but no one in your audience cares about that extra content if you never show them how to use it." So basically, what he was, we were all. I mean, I was a little taken back by the criticism, and then he kind of continued. He explained it. He said, "It's not your content that makes you different than everybody else that's in that room or in this room. It's your story. If you sacrifice your story to add more content, then your audience will remember neither of them." And I remember that. I mean, I kind of wrote that down. I'm like, God, that's brilliant, because it's what I'd been teaching in public speaking classes at that point for about a decade. But it was good to kind of get that verification from somebody else who's a expert speaker.